guys, this is Kayla.
And this is Becky, and we're with A Couple of These Read.
Yes, and we have been doing a read-along for Midnight is the Darkest Hour by Ashley Winstead. And if you haven't joined, there's still time to join. We're only 105 pages in. This is Sunday that we're filming, by the way.
Yes, and I'm a little behind. I was ahead.
I'm a little ahead.
And she's ahead, and now I'm behind, but I'll catch up.
But we're reading like 15 pages a day, so it's not that challenging. Please do join.
Yes, we need some input from you guys. Okay,
yes.
And of course, one reason I'm a little behind is because I'm also reading another book that I really like, and the First Life wins, and I'm almost through with it. So then this one will probably go really fast once
I got to a twist in this last night that I had to make myself stop, because I was like, if I keep going, I'm going to give it all away in our next book talk.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to give anything away. We are only talking about page 1 through 105 today. If you haven't read through 105, we might spoil a couple of things. So, go back, join the book club, read with us.
Yes. Well, your side of your book looks a little bit different than mine.
Yeah, I've been taking notes.
I don't have any.
This is quickly becoming one of my favorite reads of the year. We both liked Where the Crawdads Sing.
Yes.
Beautifully written.
Oh, yes. Loved it.
Kind of, for me, a little bit of a strange book, because it had a mystery to it, but the mystery wasn't the whole plot.
Right.
This is like Where the Crawdads Sing, the way it is written, the beautiful imagery, the way she describes the Louisiana countryside.
Yes.
Beautifully written. But it's also like, there are points where I'm on the edge of my seat. Like, what happened? What's going on? What do you mean by that?
Yes.
So, like, every chapter is a little bit of a cliffhanger.
Yes. But you have to move on to the next one.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's so well written. I'm loving it so far, and I love the characters. I was a little nervous when it was about, religion in the South, because I am a preacher's daughter. My dad's Methodist and not Southern Baptist like her dad, but I was raised Southern Baptist. And I know that sections of that can be kind of like their interpretation of the Bible is not what it should be. And that is definitely explored here. Historically, many religions, I think, have been used to kind of say women can't talk, women have to bow to men. Mm-hmm. And Ruth's dad is a preacher who definitely, that is his interpretation of you're a woman, you have to bow to your husband. And it becomes really, really extreme with one incident in the book specifically. And that really,
we don't need to say.
We're trying not to give it away. We're trying not to. But it's one of those things. I connect to Ruth because I understand what it is for people to hold you to a higher standard. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, my life was nothing like hers. Right. My parents weren't volatile like hers are, which in parts can be hard to read because they're such hypocrites. But there are parents out there like this. Mm-hmm.
Well, there are parents out there like that, whether they're religious or not.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, we've had students who, and we are both educators, and we've come across them at times in our professional lives. So,
absolutely.
But again, anything that says it's a cross between Twilight and Where the Crawdads Sing, I'm like, how is that possible? But the big scene in Twilight, the way Stephanie Myers came up with that, it was a dream, and Edward and Bella were in a field of wild flowers. And then this is based, she reads this book, and that's in our reading group guide. That's one of the things it talks about.
Is Ruth sneaks Twilight out of the local library,
which is a big no-no.
Yeah, she's not supposed to really read anything.
Anything that is not the Bible, she's not supposed to read.
So she reads Twilight, and it completely changed her life.
Yes.
And one of the reading group guides in this Aardvark edition is How Does Reading Twilight Alter Ruth's Worldview? Do you think this was a positive or negative change for her? What books have had a lasting effect on your perspective? So,
well, for her, I felt like with the Twilight, it opened her up that the love between Edward and Bella, because they're two very different people. They're not, they don't fit in with the in crowd. They're kind of on the outskirts of the student body and everything. And her and Everett she feels are the same way. And when they do connect, she finally has a friend that they understand each other, and they like the same things, and they read the same books, and all of that. And so that comes together just sort of like Edward and Bella. And whereas Edward and Bella, though, are a big love story, this is more about friendship than love, at least at this point, as far as we've gotten. I don't know what the future holds, but
I will say, though, and I don't blame Twilight for this, I blame her parents. It kind of makes her too trusting of men.
This is very true.
The first guy, very first guy who pays any attention to her, and he's old. She's like 17 and he's 24. She's like, sure, I'll go meet you at your truck a block from my house and ride off into the woods with you.
Yeah.
And that, of course, leads to some bad happenings in the book, some major plot points. And I will say, the fact that neither of her parents have sat her down and really had an honest conversation about love and dating and things like that isn't like basically keep your legs together.
Yeah. And all, and the only way they've presented men to her is in a very negative way.
Right.
And they're evil, they're this, they're that,
because her dad is a terrible hypocrite and just overbearing and abusive.
Yeah, and instead of, saying some men are, and this guy seems really nice. I mean, he comes across super nice.
She meets him in church.
Yeah, in her daddy's church she meets him. This is where he comes every Sunday. And so, her dad seems to like him and everything. And so, there's nothing there to guide her. And she's so naive and so sheltered. She cannot understand the little inclinations that might give somebody else the heebie-jeebies about him. She doesn't get that because she doesn't know. So in a sense, I guess it was negative in that way, but then it was positive in that she kind of thought, wow, there can be a love out there that's not controlling and that lifts you up and admires you and wants to help you and make you happy and that kind of thing.
Yeah, and I think it's a good example because I remember when Twilight came out, the people who protest, there's always people, any popular book is going to face opposition of some kind. There were people who were like, oh, don't let your daughters read this because of XYZ. And a lot of them were Southern Baptist. But it's one of those things of, as a teacher and as a parent, if you would just have conversations with your children, be honest with them. And then they can read stuff like this, but don't let the only ideas they get about whatever be from something else. Have those honest conversations.
Yes, not from a fictional book.
Exactly. Yeah, And I think the author does a good job of showing that it's not Twilight's fault.
No,
it's
not at all.
This parent's fault.
Yeah. And, the latter part of the question is what books have had a lasting effect on your perspective. Well, I mean, it depends on how deep you take that question. Of course, number one, the Bible. I mean, I've read it most of my life and I still learn every time I read it. And I'm doing a new Bible study with verse mapping and things like that. But then I think about more, contemporary novels and things. And I think about Andy Andrews. And if you've never read Andy Andrews and The Noticer, I have read that book at least 3 times. And my book looks like hers here, where I've highlighted things. And I mean, because it's all about your perspective. And it's how things happen in your life and your perspective may change.
Mm-hmm.
And it's how you come in contact with other people. And a person's perspective is their reality.
Mm-hmm.
You may say or do something and you didn't mean it you mean it in a very positive way, but someone else may not have taken it that way because of their perspective. And that is their reality. And if you want to be, around people and be positive in their lives, you've got to try and understand their perspective,
right,
so that you know what the situation is, and you may have to, work around that, and work not around it, but with them, through it, is what I'm trying to say, work through it with them. So The Noticer by Andy Andrews is just one of my favorite books of all time. And again, he's from Orange Beach, Alabama, and it's centered around Orange Beach and Gulf Shores and that area. And Jones is the man, he is the noticer. And it talks about, Andy coming from his parents die, and he's left alone at a very young age, like 19, and he ends up living under the pier in Gulf Shores. He's homeless, and it goes through all of that. And then Jones comes into his life, and then Jones comes into a lot of people's life, and it's really interesting. And there's 3 in the series there.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's a great book to read, a great series, and it will give you a lot of perspective on a lot of things.
Yeah. I think, mine, one that's had a lasting perspective on my life, obviously the Bible. I tend to think because I'm a writer, like one that's had an effect on my writing, a lot of the classics. Mark Twain was a huge influence, and part of the reason was he was one of the first white author to write anti-racist commentary into his books, which a lot of people, they open the page and they're like, oh, it says that bad word. The people who say that bad word are, either incredibly ignorant, incredibly cruel, or both. And that's, Mark Twain was a realist. That's what he's trying to show, is yes, this racism is disgusting. We should probably not have that anymore. And he's kind of making fun of racist and that whole culture that justified slavery. But also his dialogue, still best dialogue I've ever read in a book. He does this thing with dialect where every character, you can tell where they're from just the way their dialect is written. Yeah. Can't write like that anymore because it's hard to read, but it's that really had an effect on how I write dialect, how I write dialogue. F. Scott Fitzgerald, of course, with The Great Gatsby, just the way he can say so much by saying so little, because that's probably one of the shortest books I've ever read. But it's so well written that there are just layers and layers and layers, and you can learn more every time you read it. Of course, several more. Their Eyes Were Watching God, The Awakening, books like that just, they're so well written and such a different way of thinking that they kind of, even though I don't always agree with the themes in any of those 4 books I just mentioned, it's just nice to have your mind open to realize people think differently than you, and that's okay.
I think one of the books I just listening to you talk, the things they carried about Vietnam.
And it's so hard to read, but it's so good.
It is. And it really, it's a fictional book, but it's kind of based on reality. And when I was teaching social studies, my advanced AP class, they did a book review on it. And that, it was amazing because, 11th grade boys and some girls don't like to read, but they would read that book because it really got them to thinking about it. And the first time I read it, I was just I never thought about it that way, you know?
Yeah.
But it's the things they carry, and it's not talking about the material things in their backpack. It's all of the other stuff, the emotions, everything they had to go through. I mean, it was just an amazing book. And it really opened my eyes to a lot of things as a history teacher, and gave me a different perspective about some things. And it really helped my students, I think, understand the Vietnam War and things. So even fiction can help you understand the real times in history.
Yeah. And
Frank's diary.
And we're going to answer more discussion questions next week, but because we're running short on time, I think it's important, like, you always know when you're reading an important book if you can compare it to other important books in your life.
Yes.
And I think that's a really good sign for Midnight is the Darkest Hour, that reading this, pulls up these other books, these other memories, and the things that affected us, and we can so relate to these characters, even though, like, neither of us are living in a swamp in Louisiana, a swamp town in Louisiana, like, going through what she went through.
Right.
So it's so beautifully written.
It is. It's a wonderful book.
Oh, so good. If you haven't read it yet, please read along with us. If you have read it, please don't spoil it for us.
And look in the reader's guide and answer that first question for us. I would love to know what books that really influenced your life. I really would love to know that.
We will actually put that first question into our post here on YouTube. So check our information section, check our blog, and just let us know what you think.
Okay, sounds good. Till next week.
Bye.